The coffee had gone cold in my hands as I sat across from Rebecca in our therapist's office. Dr. Martinez's voice was a distant hum as I watched my wife of 8 years cry. Really cry. For what felt like the first time since I discovered her affair 3 months ago. "I can't lose you, David," Rebecca sobbed, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I know I destroyed everything we built. I was selfish, stupid, and cruel. But please, I'm begging you, don't give up on us. I'll do whatever it takes." I'd heard variations of this speech before. The night I found the text on her phone, explicit messages with someone named Marcus from her office. The morning I packed my bags and moved to my brother's apartment. The dozens of calls and voicemails that followed. But this felt different. The desperation in her eyes seemed genuine, raw. Like she'd finally grasped the magnitude of what she'd done. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her gray hair catching the afternoon light. "David, you don't have to make any decisions today. This is your journey, too." I studied Rebecca's face, searching for something I could trust. We'd met in college, two ambitious kids who thought they could conquer the world together. She'd been my best friend before she became my wife. Somewhere along the way, between my promotion to senior architect and her rise in marketing, we become strangers sharing a mortgage. "I want to see commitment," I finally said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Real commitment, not just words." Rebecca nodded frantically. "Anything. I'll quit my job if that's what you need. I'll cut off all contact with Marcus. I already blocked him everywhere. I'll come to therapy 3 times a week, 5 times, whatever you want." "I need you to understand something," I continued, setting my cup down on the side table with a deliberate calmness that belied the storm inside me. "This isn't about punishment or making you jump through hoops. This is about trust, and you obliterated mine. If I agree to try again, and I haven't decided yet, there won't be a third chance. You understand that?" "Yes," she whispered. "I understand. I swear, David, you won't regret this. I'll prove to you every single day that I'm worth fighting for." 6 weeks later, I moved back home. Rebecca had done everything she promised, and more. She'd transferred to a different department at work, submitted her phone to random checks, attended individual therapy sessions, and joined our couple's counseling faithfully. She left little notes around the house, on the bathroom mirror, tucked in my lunch bag, stuck to the steering wheel of my car, each one expressing love, gratitude, or a memory from our happier days. "Remember our first apartment?" One note read. "When we had more dreams than furniture. I want to dream with you again." I wanted to believe in the change. Some mornings, when I'd wake up to find her already up, making my favorite breakfast, looking at me with those hopeful eyes, I almost did. We'd laugh over something stupid one of us said, and for a moment, it felt like before the lies, before Marcus, before I knew what betrayal tasted like. But then night would come, and I'd lie awake, watching her sleep, wondering if she was dreaming of him, wondering if I was a fool for staying, wondering if trust, once shattered so completely, could ever truly be rebuilt, or if we were just carefully arranging the pieces around a hole that would always be there. "Give it time," Dr. Martinez advised during one of our sessions. "Healing isn't linear. There'll be good days and bad days." Rebecca squeezed my hand. "I know I have to earn this. I'm not going anywhere, David. I'll earn it every day for the rest of my life, if that's what it takes." I squeezed back, wanting desperately to believe her. Love, I was learning, doesn't die easily even when it should. It lingers like a ghost in familiar spaces, making you remember warmth when all you should feel is cold. For months into our reconciliation, I almost believed we'd make it. Rebecca had become a different person, or rather, she'd become the person I'd married again. She came home straight from work, texted me throughout the day with mundane updates about meetings and lunch orders, and never once gave me reason to doubt her whereabouts. "I'm thinking we should take that trip to Colorado," she said one evening as we cooked dinner together. Something we'd started doing as part of our reconnection rituals, as Dr. Martinez called them. "Remember how we always talked about learning to ski?" I chopped vegetables while she stirred the pasta sauce, and the domesticity of it all felt almost normal. "You hate the cold," I reminded her. "I hate losing you more." She set down the spoon and wrapped her arms around me from behind. I'm serious, David. I want to make new memories with you. Good ones that aren't tainted by my mistakes. That night, we made love for the first time since I'd moved back. It was tender and careful, both of us treating the other like something precious and breakable. Afterward, as she fell asleep in my arms, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Work had been my sanctuary during the worst of it. The firm was expanding, and I'd been putting in long hours on a new sustainable housing project. It was demanding enough to keep my mind occupied, to give me something to control when everything else felt chaotic. You seem better, my brother James observed during our weekly lunch. More like yourself. She's really trying, I admitted, pushing my sandwich around my plate. I know everyone thinks I'm crazy for taking her back, but you didn't see her, James. She was destroyed by what she'd done. James, always a protective younger brother, frowned into his coffee. I just don't want to see you hurt again. Cheater's gonna cheat, man. It's like an addiction. Not everyone who makes a mistake is doomed to repeat it. I argued, but his words lodged themselves in my chest like a splinter. By month 6, Rebecca seemed lighter somehow. The constant anxiety that had marked our first months back together had faded. She laughed more easily, complained about work drama, started talking about the future again. She'd been promoted to a senior position in her new department and was working on a major campaign for a tech startup. It's intense, she explained one night, arriving home later than usual. But in a good way. I feel like I'm actually contributing again, you know? I looked up from my laptop, noting the time, 9:30. She'd said she'd be home by 8. How was the presentation? Presentation? She blinked, then her eyes widened. Oh, right. It went well. Really well. Kevin, he's the creative director, said my pitch was exactly what the client was looking for. Something cold settled in my stomach. She'd forgotten she'd told me about a presentation. A small thing, maybe meaningless, but I'd learned to pay attention to small things. That's great, I said evenly. I'm proud of you. The next week, she went out for drinks with her team after work. She texted me at 7. Just one drink, I promise. Home by 8:30. She walked in at 10:15. Sorry. She kicked off her heels, slightly unsteady. Time got away from us. You know how it is. I didn't know how it was. The Rebecca who'd been fighting for our marriage would have left after one drink like she'd promised. The Rebecca who understood she was on thin ice wouldn't have risked making me worry. You said 8:30. I know, baby, but everyone was there, and it would have been weird to leave early. I'm building relationships with my new team. You understand, right? I wanted to understand. I wanted to believe this was normal, healthy even, my wife rebuilding her professional life, finding her confidence again. But the excuse felt too familiar, too much like the casual dismissals that had preceded discovering the truth about Marcus. Just let me know next time, I said finally, when plans change. Of course. She kissed my cheek, and I smelled wine and something else. Cologne that wasn't mine. I'm gonna grab a shower. As the water ran upstairs, I sat in the growing darkness of our living room, my phone in my hand, wondering if I was being paranoid or if my instincts were trying to warn me of something I desperately didn't want to see. The notes had stopped appearing. I realized this one morning as I reached for my coffee, expecting to find one of her messages and finding nothing. When had that happened? Last week? 2 weeks ago? They'd become such a fixture of our reconciliation that their absence felt pointed. Everything okay? I asked that evening. Rebecca looked up from her phone, thumb still hovering over the screen. You just seem distracted lately. Oh. She set the phone face down on the couch. Just work stuff. This campaign is consuming my life. The text came at 2 a.m. I only noticed because I'd gotten up for water and saw Rebecca's phone light up on the nightstand. Her side of the bed was empty. My heart sank even as I told myself there was a reasonable explanation. I found her in the kitchen, laptop open, paper spread across the table. She looked up, startled when I entered. You're up? She said, quickly closing her laptop screen. Your phone went off. Probably just a spam text. She stretched, yawning. This proposal is due tomorrow. I've been working on it for hours. I nodded, but something felt wrong. The papers on the table were blank, printer paper, not Word documents. And she closed that laptop awfully fast. The old David would have confronted her immediately, but I'd learned caution in my pain. I'd learned to gather evidence before accusations, because doubt could be dismissed, but proof couldn't. Come to bed soon, I said instead. You need sleep? Just another hour. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I lay awake until she finally slipped back into bed at 4, her phone clutched in her hand even as she drifted off. My investigation, and I hated that I was investigating my own wife again, started small. I wasn't proud of it, but fool me once, as they said. I began paying attention to patterns. The late nights that used to be occasional became regular. Tuesday and Thursday became her networking nights. Her phone, which she'd freely shared during those first months home, was now always face down, always password protected despite my request to maintain transparency. You don't trust me, she accused when I asked about it. I thought we were past this, David. Trust is earned. Rebecca, you agreed to that. For how long? Forever? Am I going to be on probation for the rest of our marriage? The fight escalated until we were both saying things we'd regret, and it ended with her storming off to sleep in the guest room. The next morning, she apologized with tears and promises, and like a fool, I accepted them. Dr. Martinez noticed a shift in our sessions. You both seem tense today. What's happening at home? David's become paranoid, Rebecca said, and I heard the edge beneath the honeyed tone. I can't even stay late at work without being interrogated. That's not fair, I countered. I'm asking for the same transparency you agreed to 6 months ago, the same transparency that's been slowly disappearing. Because you're smothering me. I'm trying to rebuild my career, my confidence, and you're treating me like a criminal. You were unfaithful, I said quietly, and the words hung in the air like smoke. That doesn't just evaporate because time has passed. Dr. Martinez intervened before Rebecca could respond, but I saw it, a flash of anger, of resentment. That reminded me uncomfortably of the woman I discovered sending explicit texts to her co-worker. That Friday, Rebecca announced she was going to a conference in Chicago. It's just overnight, Saturday to Sunday. Kevin thinks it would be great for my development to see how the big agencies operate. Kevin's going too? The whole creative team is going, David. Jesus, you sound ridiculous right now. She zipped her overnight bag with more force than necessary. You know what? I'm going, whether you approve or not. I've put my life on hold long enough trying to prove myself to you. She left before I could respond, and the door closing behind her sounded like something final. James came over that night with beer and pizza. You look like hell, man. I'm living in hell. I admitted, I don't know what's real anymore. Is she really working late? Or is she with someone? Is this conference legitimate? Or is it a cover? I become that guy, James. The one who checks phone records and credit card statements. What do the statements show? I pulled out my laptop, showing him what I'd found. Charges at restaurants during her supposed late work nights. Restaurants downtown, nowhere near her office. Uber receipts that didn't match her stated destinations. Nothing definitively damning, but everything collectively suspicious. Man, you need to confront her, James said seriously. You're torturing yourself. With what? Circumstantial evidence? She'll just say I'm paranoid again, that I'm sabotaging our recovery. I drank deeply from my beer. The worst part is, I love her. Even now, even suspected what I'm suspecting, I love her. How pathetic is that? It's not pathetic. It's human. James gripped my shoulder. But you deserve better than living like this. You deserve the truth. Sunday evening, Rebecca came home glowing. It was amazing, David. So inspiring. I networked with people from New York agencies, got to sit in on strategy sessions. She stopped, finally looking at me. Why are you looking at me like that? How was the hotel? Nice. Standard conference hotel. What was it called? She blinked. The Marriott on Michigan Avenue. I opened my laptop, turning it to show her the credit card statement I'd pulled up while she was gone. There's no charge for a hotel in Chicago. The color drained from Rebecca's face as she stared at the screen. For a long moment, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator and my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I can explain, she started, but I held up my hand. Don't insult me with another lie. My voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that comes when you're too exhausted for anger. I've been tracking things for weeks now. The late nights that don't match your calendar. The restaurant charges nowhere near your office. The Uber rides to addresses I don't recognize. You've been spying on me? Her shock seemed genuine, which almost made me laugh. You mean the way you agreed to be transparent? The condition you accepted when I gave you another chance. I closed the laptop. Where were you this weekend, Rebecca? She sank onto the couch, and I watched her cycle through options, what she could admit, what she could still hide. How much I actually knew. I'd seen this calculation before, the night I confronted her about Marcus. Kevin's cabin, she finally whispered, in Wisconsin. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though part of me had known. Kevin, your creative director. Nothing happened, she rushed to say. I swear, David, it wasn't like that. A group of us went. It was team bonding, and I knew you'd overreact, so I said it was Chicago instead. A group? I kept my voice level. Let me see your phone. David. Your phone, Rebecca, right now. With shaking hands, she unlocked it and passed it to me. I scrolled through her messages, and each one felt like a knife. Inside jokes with Kevin, deleted call logs that I could still see in the phone settings, text threads that referenced plans she'd never mentioned to me. Nothing explicitly sexual, but the intimacy was undeniable. You're doing it again, I said, still scrolling. Maybe not physically yet, but emotionally? This is exactly how it started with Marcus. That's not fair. Kevin and I are just friends. We work together closely. Of course we're going to develop a rapport. Friends don't lie about weekend trips. Friends don't delete call logs. I found what I was looking for, a thread from 2 weeks ago. Friends don't text each other at midnight saying, thinking about you. Rebecca lunged for the phone, but I stepped back. That's out of context. We were discussing a campaign and... Stop. The word came out harder than I intended. Just stop lying. To me, to yourself. You're not happy you came back, are you? You've been comfortable again for what, 2 months? And the second you felt secure, you started looking elsewhere. That's not true. Tears streamed down her face. I love you. I came home because I love you. You came home because you were scared of losing your safety net, of being the villain in the story, of facing consequences. I set her phone on the counter. But the minute you felt forgiven, the minute you didn't have to work so hard anymore, you got bored, or restless, or whatever you want to call it. She was sobbing now, the way she had in Dr. Martinez's office a year ago. Please, David, it's not what you think. I can end things with Kevin. I can transfer again. You can what? Make more promises? Write more notes? Go more therapy sessions. I felt the exhaustion deep in my bones. I gave you a second chance, Rebecca. I gave you everything you asked for, and you're throwing away. I'm not. This is different. I haven't cheated on you. I haven't done anything wrong. You lied about where you were this weekend. You've been cultivating an emotional affair right under my nose. You've been slowly pulling away for months. Thinking I wouldn't notice, I moved toward the stairs. I'm sleeping at James's tonight. We can talk more when I've had time to think. David, please. She grabbed my arm. Don't leave. We can fix this. We can go to Dr. Martinez tomorrow. We can work through this like we did before. I gently removed her hand. The difference is, last time you were remorseful. This time, you're just sorry you got caught. The look on her face told me I was right. I stayed at James's house for a week. Rebecca called and texted constantly, cycling through apologies, justifications, anger, and desperation. I let most of them go unanswered. I needed space to think clearly, to decide what I wanted without her tears clouding my judgment. Dr. Martinez agreed to see me individually. You seem more resolved than I expected, she observed during our session. I'm tired, I admitted, not angry, not even hurt anymore, just tired. I gave her every opportunity to honor her commitment, and she couldn't do it, or wouldn't. What are you going to do? I don't know yet. Part of me wants to believe her, wants to think this is salvageable. But another part, the part that's been living in constant anxiety for months, knows that I can't do this again. Trust your instincts, David. They've been right before. When I returned home the following week, Rebecca had clearly been preparing. The house was spotless. My favorite dinner was in the oven. Candles were lit. She'd even framed a photo from our wedding day and placed it prominently in the living room. "I've been thinking," she said nervously. "You're right. I got comfortable. I stopped fighting for us the way I should have. But I want to fix this, David. Really fix it." I sat down at the table, looking at the elaborate meal she prepared. It reminded me of those first months home, when she tried so hard. "Have you spoken to Kevin since I left?" She hesitated just a beat too long. Once, to explain that I needed to maintain professional boundaries. "Show me." "David, if you're serious about rebuilding trust, show me the conversation." Reluctantly, she pulled out her phone and handed it to me. The text exchange was from 3 days ago. "Rebecca, we need to cool things off." David, suspicious. "Kevin, I understand, but I miss you already." "Rebecca, me too. Let's just be careful for a while." I read it twice, making sure I wasn't misinterpreting. Then I handed the phone back to her and watched as she realized what she'd just shown me. I meant miss working with him," she stammered. "We have a great professional dynamic and—" "Please stop." She did, her mouth hanging open mid-excuse. I stood, walked to my study, and retrieved the envelope I'd been carrying in my briefcase all week. When I returned, Rebecca's eyes were fixed on a manila folder, like it might contain a bomb. "What is that?" she whispered. A choice I hoped I wouldn't have to make. I set the envelope on the table between us, next to the cooling dinner she'd prepared. Rebecca's eyes darted from it to my face and back again, like she was watching a tennis match that would determine her fate. "David, whatever that is, we can talk about it. We can work through this." Her voice had taken on a pleading quality that once would have moved me to compassion. Now it just sounded like white noise. "Do you remember what I said to you in Dr. Martinez's office? The day I agreed to try again?" She nodded, tears already forming. "You said you needed to see real commitment. And what else?" "That," her voice broke, "that there wouldn't be a third chance." I meant it, Rebecca. I really did. I sat down across from her, keeping my hands flat on the table, grounding myself. "Over the past year, I've watched you transform. Or at least, I thought I did. Those first months, you were everything I needed you to be. Remorseful, transparent, present. You fought for us every single day. I'm still fighting." "No." I said it gently but firmly. "You stopped fighting the moment you felt safe again. I can actually pinpoint when it happened. 3 months ago, when you got that promotion. Suddenly, the desperate woman who'd do anything to save her marriage disappeared. And in her place was someone who resented having to prove herself." Rebecca wiped at her tears, smearing her mascara. "That's not fair. I was rebuilding my career, my sense of self. You can't expect me to grovel forever. I never asked you to grovel. I asked you to be honest, to keep the promises you made, to not cultivate another emotional affair the second my guard was down." I tapped the envelope. "Last week, when I told you I was going to James's to think, do you know where I went first?" She shook her head mutely. "To a lawyer. Not because I wanted to, but because I needed to know what my options were when this moment came." I pulled out the papers, spreading them across the table. "These are divorce papers. Rebecca, I had them drawn up while you were texting Kevin about missing him and asking him to be careful for a while." The blood drained from her face. "You're not serious." "David, I haven't actually cheated on you. Kevin and I we didn't do anything physical. Do you really think that matters?" I asked, and for the first time in this conversation, I felt anger creeping into my voice. "You lied about where you were. You deleted messages and call logs. You built an intimate relationship with another man while I was home trusting that you'd changed. The only reason it didn't become physical is because I caught you first. We don't know that. Maybe it would never have gone there. Maybe you would have stopped yourself this time. I laughed bitterly. The same way you stopped yourself with Marcus? No, Rebecca. I know exactly where this was headed because I've lived this story before. With you. She reached across the table for my hands, but I pulled them back. Please, David. I know I messed up, but we can recover from this. We've done it before. That's exactly the point. We've done this before. You've cried these tears before, made these promises before. And here we are again, except this time I'm not shocked or devastated. I'm just done. You can't mean that. Her voice rose in panic. We have a life together. 8 years of marriage. Our home, our friends, our history. You're going to throw all of that away because I got too close to a coworker? I'm not throwing anything away. You did that. Twice. I pulled the papers toward me, clicking a pen. I've already signed. I need you to sign too. No. She stood abruptly, backing away from the table. No, I won't. You can't make me. We can fight for this, David. I know I can change, really change this time. We can start over, go to therapy twice a week. I'll quit my job. I've heard all of this before. I interrupted, word for word. It's the same script you used last time. And you know what? You did change for a little while. Just long enough for me to let my guard down. Just long enough for you to feel secure. Then you slip right back into old patterns. Rebecca slid down the wall, crumpling to the floor. I love you. Doesn't that count for anything? I loved you too. I said quietly, using past tense deliberately. I loved you enough to forgive the unforgivable. I loved you enough to endure months of anxiety and doubt. I loved you enough to give you the second chance you swore you wouldn't waste. But I don't love myself enough to let you destroy me a third time. This isn't fair, she sobbed. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone deserves forgiveness. You already got your forgiveness. You already got your second chance. What you're asking for now is permission to keep hurting me, to keep breaking your promises, and to face no real consequences. I stood, walking over to where she sat. That's not forgiveness. Rebecca, that's enabling. She looked up at me, mascara running down her face, and for a moment I saw the woman I'd married. Young, beautiful, full of promise. But I also saw the woman who betrayed that promise not once but twice, who'd look me in the eye and lie, who'd made me question my own sanity with her gaslighting and deflections. What happens now? She whispered. You sign the papers. We divide our assets. We move on with our lives. Just like that? After everything? After everything, I agreed. I'll stay at James's while you find a place. Or you can stay here and buy out my half. I don't care. My lawyer will be in touch about the details. I walked back to the table and gathered the papers, placing them back in the envelope except for one copy, which I left in front of her. You have a week to sign. After that, we do this the hard way. David, wait. She struggled to her feet. Can I ask you something? I paused at the door. Did you ever really forgive me? Or were you just waiting for me to mess up again? It was a fair question, one I'd asked myself during those sleepless nights. I forgave you, I said honestly. But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean blind trust. You could have rebuilt that trust brick by brick, day by day. Some people do. But you got tired of building. You wanted everything back to normal on your timeline, not on the timeline that healing actually requires. So this is it? We're really over. I looked at her one last time, this woman I'd shared nearly a decade of my life with. I tried to find the words to explain that love wasn't always enough, that trust was the foundation everything else was built on, and that some cracks couldn't be repaired. They could only be built around or abandoned. A second chance doesn't come a third. I said finally, echoing the words I told her a year ago. You knew that. I told you that. You chose to gamble anyway. I left her there on the floor of our kitchen, surrounded by the elaborate dinner that had gone cold, next to a framed wedding photo that now felt like evidence from a crime scene. As I drove to James's house, I felt lighter than I had in months. My phone buzzed constantly. Calls, texts, voicemails from Rebecca alternating between rage and desperation. I turned off the sound and kept driving. 3 days later, the signed papers arrived via courier. No note, no final message, just her signature on the line next to mine. Clean. Final. 6 months after that, I ran into Kevin at a coffee shop downtown. He was with Rebecca, his arm around her waist in a way that spoke of possession rather than affection. She looked thinner, tired, but she was smiling at something he'd said. They didn't see me, and I didn't approach. As I watched them order their drinks, laughing together, I felt nothing. No anger, no jealousy, not even vindication. Just a profound sense of relief that the person being lied to, being manipulated, being taken for granted, wasn't me anymore. I finished my coffee and left, walking out into the autumn sunshine. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, a colleague who'd asked me to dinner next week. I'd said yes, tentatively, testing the waters of dating again. I wasn't ready for anything serious. Maybe I wouldn't be for a while. But I was ready to be with someone who valued honesty, who understood that trust was sacred, who wouldn't need a second chance because they'd cherished the first one. As I walked to my car, I thought about Rebecca one last time. I hoped she'd find happiness, even if I doubted she'd find it with Kevin or anyone else until she addressed whatever was inside her that kept seeking validation outside herself. But that wasn't my problem anymore. I'd given her a second chance, and she'd proven that some people aren't looking to change. They're just looking for permission to stay the same. I was finally free to find someone who didn't need either.